諸門葛藤集第57則一室人心凡妙教に曰くひとたび人心を失すれば万語にも帰らず Entangling Vines, Case 57 To lose a human birth. The Brahma Net Sutra says, lose your human birth once, and you may not regain it for 10,000 kalpas. Good afternoon. I don't know how it is for you, but to me this day, I experience it with some mellowness to it, partially by the fact of just sweating a lot, and the mellow light, the mellow wind, and our mellow chanting this morning, full of heart, without any holding back. So I really want to thank you for that. It is such a precious experience to be able to be here and have all of us join together in the one voice of this Kanon Bodhisattva that is hanging on the wall here. And we'll talk about what that actually means today with this koan. So thank you for that. It's a very short koan, which makes it difficult for me because the map is wide open. This is the starting point, and we'll go somewhere, and we always end up in the same place. It's very short, and it's a strategically posed threat. Lose your human birth once, and you may not regain it for 10,000 kalpas. An admonition, at least. A threat if we believe in a system that stands behind it, that guarantees us a specific mechanical outcome to our being. It's also a koan that has no ancestors in it. It is taken from a sutra, the Bonmo-kyo, the Brahmajala Sutra, not a sutra that we know very well. Has anyone any knowledge of it? Interesting. The Brahmajala Sutra, we know about it just by one fact, for example, 10 major precepts for bodhisattvas. And I suppose everybody who is wearing a rakusu here has taken those 10 precepts. This is where they came from this Bonmo-kyo. So it is considered, therefore, one of the Vinaya Sutras, one of the sutras that exposes and expounds on how the Sangha should conduct their lives. And in this case, the folks who have taken refuge to the three jewels and taken these 10 major bodhisattva precepts. Of course, there are 48 minor precepts that follow that along the bodhisattva path, which are also described here. But I will spare them to you. The 10 are monumental to begin with. Here is the next question. Does anyone know anything about a Buddha by the name of Vairocana? Have you seen a statue of a Vairocana or Vairocana Buddha anywhere? We seek it far away, right? When the truth is so near. Roshi, do we have a statue? What a wonderful answer. What is this Buddha here? The Buddha of great light, Dainichi, which is the Japanese word for Vairocana Buddha. So he's sitting right here. And in this Brahmajala Sutra, the Brahmajala Sutra tells us about what the relationship of this incarnation of a Buddha is to Shakyamuni Buddha, to Gautama Buddha. And it is expounded as this is the manifestation of the Dharmakaya aspect of the three bodies of the Buddha. You know, the Dharmakaya, the Nirmanakaya, and the Sambhogakaya. So three aspects of the body of the Buddha. We spoke about that in the past. And I will not go into it. It will take some time. But it's an expression of this underlying Buddhahood. There he sits, patiently presiding over the activities in this monastery and the surrounding district, the Garan, for almost 50 years. And I'm certain they have presided over such activities in another place before, manifesting that great light of that great light Dharani that we also chant here. So the name Brahmajala, the name of the sutra, derives from a contraption, a Buddhist contraption that is mentioned in this sutra, especially in the beginning of the sutra. Brahma, another word, another name. Brahma is a name for Indra, the Hindu god Indra. Brahma is the same, and Jala is a net. So this is also the sutra from which we know Indra's net. It is a vast net that this god Brahma or Indra hangs in place over the whole universe, with its center at Mount Sumeru. And wherever the strings of the net have a nexus, there hangs a multifaceted, polished gem. So many, we cannot count them. And when you come close to one of the gems and you look at it, within each gem, all of the other gems reflect. They are connected to each other, interbeing. Described many, many years ago as the net of Indra. So it says, at that time, Shakyamuni Buddha contemplated the wonderful jewel net hung in Lord Rama's palace and preached by the Brahmajala Sutra for the great assembly. He said, the innumerable worlds in the cosmos are like the eyes of the net. Each and every world is different. Its variety infinite. So too are the Dharma doors taught by the Buddhas. Wonderful. There are so many doors, and each of the doors reflects in each other. Have you ever considered yourself being one of those jewels in Indra's net? Oh no, I am not worth it. Better stop thinking like that. We all are. Each of us is at that crossing of two strings of the net. One we could call the string of time, and the other one we could call the string of space. And here we are. I am sure in the first couple of days of this wonderful being together, this wonderful interbeing, we all have experienced that, yes, we reflect each other and all in one. And it motivates us to, well, maybe I will not move. It really hurts. My legs hurt terribly, but I disturbed the whole net. The flash of lightning, the disturbance would go through the whole net. Unconscious motivation, just by the fact of interdependence, as described in this Brahmajala Sutra, the Bonmo Kyo, through Indra's net. And light has a lot to do with it. Light has a lot to do with it, and also the many, many facets of those polished stones. Yesterday, I spoke of the stone tumbler. That's how these stones became polished, by interacting with each other. And each time one of the jewels reflects the infinite number of others, it changes. It's a wonderful description where I would like you to not try to think about it, but to feel with your intuition and your gut in the same way that you felt with chanting without the self. That is that very space where that reflection happens, without any difficulty, without any subject and object. As I said, the sutra is also noteworthy for describing who Dainichi is, Vairochana Buddha, as the personification of the Dharma, or the Dharmakaya, as I said. It says, now I, Vairocana Buddha, am sitting across a lotus pedestal. Take a look. It's right there, the lotus pedestal. On 1,000 flowers surrounding me. See, look what's behind them. Are 1,000 Shakyamuni Buddhas. Each flower supports 100 million worlds. In each world, a Shakyamuni Buddha appears. All are seated beneath a Bodhi tree. All simultaneously attain Buddhahood. All these innumerable Buddhas have Vairocana or Vairochana, Dainichi, as their original body. And once again, it's you It's you, it's you, it's you, it's you, it's everybody here. We all are. We are part of these worlds. We are worlds of our own, born from Indra's net, from the body of the Buddha. Sounds familiar, right? This is the lotus land of purity. This body is the body of the Buddha. So this is a little bit about where the quote of the koan came from. It's very short though, so I had to look up what the full quote is, yeah, and from what context it comes. It seems, yeah, well, if we do this, we might as well do it thoroughly, right? That's a good thing to know in this practice, you know. Half-assed, it's not going to do it. So if we look at something like that, let's look into it until we scrape the bottom of the barrel and knock on it so maybe it falls out. It says in the Brahmajala Sutra, the Bonmokyo, if we do not fear transgressions, it is difficult to develop a wholesome mind. Therefore, the sutras contain this teaching. Do not regard a minor misdeed as inconsequential. In time, single drops of water may fill a large vessel and make it overflow. Offenses committed in one moment may result in eons of suffering in the hells. Once the human life is lost, it may not be regained for myriads of lifetimes. In our translation, lose your human birth once, and you may not regain it for 10,000 kalpas. Youth is like a galloping horse. Our life is more fleeting than the waters of a mountain stream. Today we are alive. Tomorrow, who knows? Let each of us practice diligently and single-mindedly. That is the full quote. This is a translation from the Sutra Translation Committee of the United States and Canada, they translated this sutra in the year 2000 in this version. If we just look at it from a very superficial point of view, we would say, another religious teaching. But by sitting here and putting our flesh to the grindstone of the cushion, to the grindstone of the schedule, to the demands of the teacher to bring yourself and work the fullest, we know that this is not just a religious prescription for society so that we get along a little better. We can think about the words that are in here. And maybe we would use different words. For example, if we do not fear transgressions, fear is probably not a word that we want to use here. Let's say if we believe that there is no such a thing as transgression. If we are not aware, if we are not awake to not transgress, then it's difficult developing a wholesome mind and a wholesome practice. Well, people come to this place, but it's not a compartment where we act wholesomely and refill our good deeds bank and then go out in the world and spend it. I can go and transgress again. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not a zero-sum game. The wholesome mind develops by knowing that, and I'm sorry to break that to you, that our mere existence is a transgression. It is a very humbling thing, realization, to come to the point that you know, well, with whatever I do, my mere being here consumes energy that is taken from somewhere. The cilia in my nose and my breathing apparatus, and yours too, hopefully, filters out the little things that are floating in the air. And there are some living beings there too. And then we call it the immune system. But it is nothing else than bloody murder. And if you had ears to listen, and you could hear the eggplant in the kitchen, every time it is cut, we wouldn't just eat it and think, okay, yeah, I deserve this because I'm hungry. But we develop an attitude that is completely different. I am receiving, and we say it with our verses every time we have a meal. Thirdly, what is most essential is the practice of attention, which helps us cut through greed, anger, and delusion. The greed we want to cut through is the greed of just shoving the food into our mouth because our body says, feed me. The anger, why do we have to eat so fast? Why don't I get to eat what I want? And the delusion that this is something normal. No, it's not. It's not only a receiving, with every receiving is the taking. Receiving food means taking life. So, not being aware that our mere existence is a transgression or creates harm. Without knowing that, it's hard to really develop a wholesome mind and a wholesome practice. It has nothing to do with feeling guilty about it. What it might do, though, it might raise in us the very strong feeling of living responsibly. It is not a solution to say, well, I stop eating. Then we are exerting the same greed, anger, and delusion on our own physicality. And believing that that is not harmful, while fully knowing that it is. So here are the teachings in this sutra. Do not regard a minor misdeed as inconsequential. The teaching of the Buddha and of the law, the Dharma, of karma, of codependent origination, cause and effect, engi, Inga, whatever it is called, is you can't, I can't, nobody can get away with anything. Sorry. It just doesn't work. What is explained to us is it might take some time to catch up with us. And often the worst catching up is not when the actual effect is happening, but when we become aware of what we have caused. And that is also a learning process that we learn to see these almost cosmic mechanics clearer and clearer. And for that we develop an eye that is called the Dharma eye, that clearly sees, that clearly knows and informs a Dharma heart that acts from a very different place, fully knowing of the harm that is inevitably involved in existence. At this time here, it was of course described with suffering in hells. Offenses committed in a moment may result in eons of suffering in the hells. The offense committed when sitting down of not pulling even the last wrinkle of your garment under your buttocks might end you up in the hell of a leg having turned into something that doesn't even feel like wood. Just a dead piece of meat lying in front of you, and we don't know how long will it go, but what you know is the bell will ring and then we have to get up again. What do I do with that thing? Right? That is one hell. Here, though, we speak about once the human life is lost, it may not be regained for myriads of lifetimes. Lose your human birth once, and you may not regain it for 10,000 kalpas. Buddhism and the Indian tradition in general has this wonderful way of explaining things that are unimaginable, huge, inconceivable, immeasurable, beyond numbers. And it's always done in a very physical way. How long is a kalpa? There are many descriptions. Hi.
The time of duration during that angel coming from universe and touch the big stone with cloth.
Yeah.
And the description through the stone gradually, maybe long time. But the stone gone and go back to the heaven. That's one cup.
That's right. One thing you should know about this stone, it has a name. Mount Everest. Mount Everest. So it's not just a little stone, it's the highest mountain that you can imagine. There's another one that Buddha Amida is going from world to world, from these countless worlds, from each world to the next world. And he has a container that is 1 mile wide, 1 mile tall, and 1 mile deep, and it is filled with the seeds of the poppy seeds. And carrying his stash of poppy seeds in each world, he drops one. Once he has visited all the worlds and exhausted all the poppy seeds, 1 kalpa has passed. So it's a considerable amount of time. Now, what is it that is so special about human birth, we might ask, that we are admonished by the Buddha, by so many other teachings of human beings, to make good use of this being a human. Here's another story that goes to that elucidates it a little bit. One day the Buddha, Shakyamuni, was walking with his disciple Anansanja. And he picked up some dirt from the ground where they were walking. And he just put a little bit on his fingernail of his thumb. He turned to Anansanja, and said, Ananda, which is greater, the amount of dirt on my fingernail or the amount of dirt on this whole earth? And Ananda said, World-honored one, of course, the amount of dirt on the whole earth is much greater than the amount of dirt on your fingernail. The Buddha said, yes, Ananda, there are as many beings and existences born at any time as the amount of dirt on the whole earth, compared to the amount of dirt on my fingernail. This dirt on my fingernail is how many human beings there are, compared to all beings, which are as many as the dirt on this whole earth. But those born as humans are not special. It is not because they are better, but because they have awareness. It is because they have awareness that they are therefore responsible for taking care of all existence. This is what humans have as a responsibility for, since they have this awareness. It is not that they are splendid because they are humans, but it is a matter of course that with that awareness, they will take care of all beings. That's, according to the teaching of the Buddha, what it means to have awareness and be a human being. Yesterday we spoke about our planned vacation to the Sea of Samsara, residing in the Karma Hotel under the auspices of the Raja of Kalinga. That's the one who chopped the Buddha into pieces, you know. So I found the tickets upstairs in my room, and you will have to come with me to visit that Sea of Samsara. In Japanese, I think it's called Rinne, which is the wheel of birth and death. Also, Rinne Shoji. And there are 6 local attractions there. And maybe we should say this hotel has 6 floors. 6 floors, 6 realms that describe different guests who have taken residence in that hotel. On the top floor, in the penthouse, that's the floor of the devas, of the gods. It is the most pleasurable filled of those 6 floors. And typically divided, there are 26 rooms on that floor. We won't speak about what those rooms are, but they are all suites. A rebirth into this heavenly realm is believed from very good karmic conditions. A deva does not need to work. and is able to enjoy that sixth floor up there, all pleasures found on the lower floors. However, these pleasures of the God realm lead to upadana. Upadana is attachment, becoming dependent on those pleasures. It also, you might have noticed that in society, or I notice this in myself, that the more we become attached to certain pleasures, manifests itself in a lack of spiritual pursuits. And from the Buddhist point of view, that would mean these folks on the sixth floor, they don't care for liberation. I think some people, some of those devas, they live there and never leave it. They live there permanently because they don't have the capacity to really realize that it is still unsatisfactory. Eventually the pleasures will wear off. Discontent will set in. And this floor will have to be left. So one floor below, on the fifth floor, welcome to the fifth floor, is the human realm. Manusya. It is asserted that we, the inhabitants of the human realm, are born here with vastly different physical endowments and with the possibility of developing spiritual and moral nature because of the past karma or the karmic conditions that makes us arise in this realm of humans. It is considered to be very fortunate because of the awareness that there is the possibility to see through rinne, samsara, and thus be not. Well, are we here back at case 2? Does an enlightened person fall under causation? Maybe there are foxes on the fifth floor too. But we have the capacity to see through it, through practice. One floor below, the Asura realm, the demigods. I think sometimes they are also called titans, taking up the ancient Greek title for that, the demigods. They're notable for being angry. And they have supernatural powers. Sometimes they sneak in the elevator and go up to the fifth floor and wreak havoc. Sometimes they fight with the gods. In traditional Buddhist cosmology, the Manusya are also plagued by these titans, where they manifest as illnesses and as natural disasters. Even titans, asura, accumulate karma or create conditions and are reborn. It's hard to say if this is one of the lower floors, an evil floor or a harmful floor, because in the end they are all temporary. Let's go further down. There's the animal floor. In the state of existence of being born as an animal. Traditionally, the thinking is it's somewhat similar to hell, because animals are believed in the basic Buddhist thinking that there's only the drive of impulse and instinct, of preying on each other, and therefore suffering. Well, I don't necessarily believe that. You know that. Anyone who has met Nikita knows that. A four-legged bodhisattva who used to be here quite often. Further down, hungry ghost realm. Preta. You know, the hungry ghosts. Excessive craving. Excessive attachments. They have a body, yes, but it's invisible and are made out of subtle matter. They are described as having great hunger and thirst, and bellies that are really big that need to be filled with food and drink, but their mouth is only the size of a pinhole. The humans from the human realm feel compassion with even the hungry ghosts. Once we develop this kind of compassionate mind, and the hungry ghosts are fed. Have you ever fed a hungry ghost? Yes. We do it at every meal. The little piece of food that we put on the offering, the saba, is for the feeding of the hungry ghosts. And the long version of the chant of the feeding of the hungry ghosts is the Daisegaki. And in some monasteries, while you purify the food, the offering, you go Jiten Kijin Shu Gokin Suji Kyu Suji Hen Jio Ishi Kijin Kyu, which is a central part of the Segaki chant. Even though, according to the Buddhist cosmology, it's not a good realm to live in, it's not the worst, being a hungry ghost. And then here's our favorite, and I have given several teishos about it, and spoken about Huhuva, the ice hell, and the blue lotus ice hell. This is very interesting. Naraka is the hell realm for beings who have really strayed from the path of benevolence and committed horrible acts. Killing, theft, lying, adultery, whatever you can think of. There are many details, numerous hellish regions with all different kinds of tortures. Being eaten alive, being beaten, all kinds of forms of torture. But even the hell realm bears through the activity of Dharma and the turning of samsara, which is a wheel, the ability to purify that harmful karma. These are the 6 realms in this hotel. And it's really hard to believe it. I use the hotel metaphor so it is not too serious, like this is the Buddhist cosmology and you have to believe this. No. When I look at this, this is a description that came out of the many, many generations of human beings doing very intense practice and encountering human condition in various ways, expressing it in a teaching that is expressed and understandable to other human beings and giving them hints of what has been experienced by this humanity. And that's important because sometimes today you will read that the psychological explanation of the Buddhist cosmology is desecrating the tradition and things like that. I don't think so. This came out of the mind and heart of human beings through their own visiting, staying, and leaving these various realms. Now, I'm sure you count into these beings too. You might sit here and turn into a hungry ghost. I must have. And I see it there, it's too big, I can't get it into my pie hole. Hell, I don't have to say much about hell. I'm sure you have created many more terrible hells that are so unique to yourself that nobody can imagine it. And the suffering. But as I look around, it doesn't seem to me that any one of us got stuck in it. And if you feel you're still stuck in that hell, it is temporary. So these are the realms. Now the question is, what does it mean to lose a human birth? Is it absolute time, the kalpa that is being spoken about? Is it an attachment of us humans to only think in the human dimension of time? When the bell doesn't ring and you are in one of those hells, it might seem like a kalpa. It might even offer the opportunity to come and exit the temporality. Then there are no kalpas, there are no hells, and we aren't even there. So I will take a drink and then I will quickly tell you how I was taught to think about this rebirth. This admonition is an admonition to cultivate our awareness. There is the term bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, the awareness that liberation is possible. The awareness that purification is possible. And it is a warning against these stated areas where we can end up. But at the same time knowing that it is temporary. When can we lose a human birth? Do we want to ultimately lose our human birth? Yeah. Temporarily. In our formal practice, we are offered opportunities to disappear as a human being. When we prostrate and we lift the feet of the Buddha above our ears, the wisdom of this human tradition above our own limited wisdom, and we really do it with fervor. It's not a bad word. With full throwing ourselves away, we have temporarily lost the human birth, but we have disappeared into this wholeness I spoke about yesterday. Wholeness. And there was one thing I mentioned yesterday, that the enemy in Zen is also finding a true teacher and a true teaching. And I asked, what is it that a true teacher offers us? And I said it's a path to wholeness. Now that we have heard today's exposition on this sutra, we also have to realize that in that teaching, it might be preceded and have to be preceded by a path to wholesomeness. Because one cannot happen without the other. That's why we have this admonition of developing the awareness of this wholesome mind, of this wholesome practice that then allows us to return, not as a rebirth that is plagued by a cycle of samsaric karmic conditions that enslaves what's happening, but like a subatomic particle that is nowhere and everywhere, nobody and everything. One gem, all the gems, the whole net. That is really this Muga practice of no self. It has taught me that this life is precious. This moment is precious. And even thinking that I have this life is a delusion. We might think when we come here and see the formality, hear about history, about Dharma teaching, about ancestors, that practice is some kind of compartment. But I can only express that for me, practice, and I hope for you, is no different than living fully. The great promise of the Mahayana teaching is that all beings, in all conditions, in all realms, are fundamentally Buddha. That also means that this practice is compatible with wherever we are. And it offers us to maybe for the first time really be where that is. And then we realize, yeah, this is not a rehearsal. No, it's not a performance either. This is it. And in Zazen, we develop this intuition, the clearer seeing, the clarity, the compassion for our own shortcomings, the compassion for being in such a terrible situation where you can't do anything right, where your own existence is harmful, and yet it gives you the energy and the vow to make it count. Sometimes it takes just one thing you tell yourself when you find yourself. When I find myself engaging in some patterns, because all of this is, karma is nothing else than a description of conditions, patterns, whatever you want to name it, is not to engage in them. First, we have to learn to see it. This is what Dharma study is. Why do we look at those 6 floors in the hotel? So we can recognize patterns. It is told to us by our predecessors and ancestors through their own experience that these similes, these pictures, these analogies allow us to, when we have our eyes open, to, bing, 6th floor. And that's really, really important. And it is also, patterns are also resonance. My ordination teacher was Denkyo Shitsu Kyozan Joshu. Denkyo Shitsu is his room name. His room name for the room in which he was seeing his students. And Denkyo means transmitting the echo, E-C-H-O. Transmitting the resonance. When one person chants, Shujo muen seigan wo. It's a resonance. When we all do it, Shujo muen seigan wo. The whole net of Indra resonates. The gemstones move and sparkle. Learning how to resonate with the wholesome way of living. Learning how to recognize the unwholesome ways is practice, is life. The echo is so important. Playing the han, the jokei, and those sitting at the top of the tan are in the marvelous position to be in the middle of the drama of cause and effect, of striking the han, and of receiving the echo from this sacred mountain, from this lake, and without having to look, knowing that it is there. So let us resonate together. Let us be the resonators with that is wholesome, that which does not engage in duality and takes sides. Remember the indigenous people's teaching. When the young child asked the elder about a terrible conflict that happened, what is that? And the elder responded, you know, my child, there is a black wolf and a white wolf inside of me and inside of you, and they are fighting. And the child asks, So which one will win? And the elder said, the one we feed.